Excellent. So there are no slides for this session at all. So if you wanted to see slides, you missed that in the last session. I've sent the last deck to Firely, so they'll be uploaded into Hoover as they can. So yeah, you'll be able to grab that. And for those that saw a little bit on that AI chat, if you wanted to go and mess with that, there's a little bit of setup you need to do. So open up the lab, which is just at FHIRPathLab.com. Then go into tester, which is where the actual FHIRPath testing engine is. Then we have our settings. And actually, just to show that this is all how you'll be seeing it, let me go into an in-private browser, FHIRPathLab.com, into the tester, and then you'll click in here and you'll go, well, that's a whole lot less stuff than I just had. Now, how do I get that back? Because it's like a new feature, I'm still working through it and actively making things happen. What you have to do is say the magic word and you'll get access to the actual keys to put in. So I don't give you any keys. This is not my agent. It's just OpenAI or whatever you want to pump in. And then you put in your key, and then that will be able to be used. So it's going to use your key, so however much you want to use it, it's not costing me, it's costing you, yay. And then you'll put in whichever model, so GPT-4o or whatever you're going to be using. So yep, and then you can then change that back to your name. So Ruben Danny. Yep, so I bet you haven't had that spelling before. So yes, I won't save that and I'll just close that window down. And hope I closed the right one. All right. So does anyone have an expression? So this is that's the... Oh, sorry. So into here. All you needed to do was in here, you don't need the advanced properties. All you really need to do is say the magic word. It's not please, it's say the magic word. Yep. And then you'll get access to those extra fields. And it's just a capital S in case. Yep. Cool. So you just go in the FHIRPath lab. It doesn't matter which page because they all have the same heading. Click the little gear in the corner, which has got the settings on it, which opens up user settings. So this FHIR server at the top is normally going to be FHIR.formslab.com. So what I use that for is in that drop-down menu, you've got access to structure definitions, library, search parameters, and so that will drill that server, whatever it is you've got configured in there, to go and see those. So just to show that, we can go into structure definitions, and that's now drilled into that specific server that's in that setting up here. So that one. And then that's listed that out. So if you wanted to go and test on your own structure definitions, which you've got your invariants, it doesn't have any security in there, so you can't point it at your own stuff unless you do something fancy, not my problem. Cool. So that's how we get in. Cool. So we had some requests on search parameters. I think that was the leading request on Hoover. Let me just double check. Hands-on lab. Where are the results? Polls. So the results, expressions for questionnaires and search parameters. Excellent. And one response? No. Okay. All right, so we'll pick on a search parameter. So read the patient's work email address. All right, so let's go to the lab. Now I'm going to clear this out. And we're going to be creating one to read the patient's work, actually. I'm just going to paste it over here, not to run, but just so that you can see what the expression is that we're going to be building. Does that sound like a reasonable start? Pretty simple? All right. So read the patient's work address, and then he's going to immediately hide the thing. So that's useful. So where is the work address? So we will find, well, that's going to be in the telecom. So telecom. Cool. So let's run that. Yep, so we get a heap. So far we've got, yes, here's our results for the telecoms. We want to have the value. So if I'm creating a search parameter, I'm probably going to want to read the actual dot value. So I'll go dot value and run that. And so I've got a heap there, but I only want the, which one was I saying? The work address. So the work email. So instead I'm going to need a dot where. Dot value, and I need to say dot use equals work, use equals work, and we'll run that. And how can I be sure that that's actually doing what I think it's doing? So what I'll do is I'll do a dot trace, TC, doesn't matter what I call it, then I can run that, and then have a look in that trace log, and I can see, yes, that's returning a work, but that's not the email address, that's a phone number. So that's a really good use of a trace to try and work out, okay, that's not the result, especially when you've got something that is so simple on the end. And we also need, and what is it? System equals email. So that would be how I do that run. And of course there's no emails in this example, so we can go and change one or add another one into that example to get that. So email bp@example.com, and we'll run that, and there we go. So we get, there's our expression. So that's kind of neat. But let's say that for our example, if there's no system value in there, I'm happy to ignore the fact that, or if there's no use equals work, I'm happy that that could be an acceptable result. Then I could just remove that out. Actually, sorry, Z. So I could do that and say, or use dot empty. So use, yes. So in this case, I'm going to have another email. Sorry? System email, yep. BP2@test. So this means I'll be able to get both of those, but only, and actually I'll just change one more, just so you can see that the other one didn't get picked. So there's a decent example where you've got a where clause where you're also considering the empty status to get in. Did that seem pretty reasonable? Is there anything else anyone would like to do to this search parameter to create something useful? No. Okay. So let's have a look at another one. Read the patient's MRN. So medical record number, MRN, yep. Okay, does our patient have an MRN before I actually get into writing one? Yep. Okay. So who'd like to suggest what's the first thing I need to do here? Dot identifier? Yep. Cool. And what's the actual result I'm going to expect to get out? Which property is it? Dot value? Yep. So that gives me my navigation. So excellent. Job done. I can go home. Not quite. Cool. All right, so I need a where clause. Maybe I should ask. So is that the right place? Yep, so I've got type. Yep.
I apologize for the stupid question, but I'm not getting the resource on the right-hand side. I'm trying to pull up a patient resource, find a patient resource.
Okay, so if you just go straight to the lab, that should be the default that's coming in, and you're just not seeing that at all.
I got a condition resource when I came in. I don't know why.
That's funky. So type patient.example up there and click download and see if that comes through. So that's a nifty little feature, is that...
Awesome, thank you.
Does that work? Yep. So that was a good call out. In the settings, there's this other file server for examples. That is the file server URL for the examples. So if you put that in and just type a relative example like this, that'll then download that specific one. So if you want to put in a full URL to your own server, as long as it's open and can get accessed from the browser, then this will bring it back, and cause is enabled, because you'll get penalised for that. Cool. Let's hope that this one actually has one. Yep, it does. Good. And it happens to also be the same, so cool. So type.coding is what we've got so far. .code. What was that? Equals MR. Does that look right? Yeah? I've got one thumb that says that could be right, so let's run it and see what we get. Yeah, it worked. Okay, so do you think we're done? So I'll give a tip that this is not quite right, but so what's wrong with it?
It's an array. Coding is an array.
Coding is an array. So then why has this worked?
Because there is only a single value in that array.
Exactly. That is the perfect answer. So if I go and add another one in here, because I've got a localized version of this coding as well, .australia/ oh yeah, and we're a little bit more progressive. So we've got misses, and it's gone. This is really common, and so that's why I like it as a good example. And it hasn't thrown an exception, it hasn't thrown an error, you've just got no result. And so what's the first thing I start doing? I start scratching my head, going, what's going on? So best thing I can do is switch over to the Filey engine, which has got my static validator on it, and it will check and tell you that this expression and the IG publisher, if you have them in there, gives the same errors, because it does static checks. It will say, yeah, there's something going on. And so if I flick over and look at that, I get the similar sort of thing, and I can see when I got to here, in that coding.code, I've got a collection. So, all right, what do I need to do to fix that?
Select.
I need a select. Where am I putting the select?
Straight after.
Just here? Yeah?
Yeah.
So what's that going to do? It's... Yep, exactly. What's in the where is no longer a Boolean. And we get this nice little message that says, yes. Now, if I run that against the other engines, I don't get those tips. So sorry for plugging my own thing there, but it's super handy for getting there. So all right, so select that's the tip that you usually get for running the collection. And you're not wrong. But there's one more step I need. So did you just hear?
Yeah, after select exists.
Cool. So that's a pretty good answer. Cool.
But we should look at the system also.
Yes, you should also do that. System equals, and yep, I would fill that out. Actually, I will fill that out just to be sure, because, you know,
There should be a way to concatenate that, like you just use a system and then the bar and the equal.
that'd be kind of neat, wouldn't it? Yeah, there's some discussion around that. Yep.
Each sequence would be with a hash sign, system hash code. That's the file short.
Yeah, the normal structure for that would be around .mr. So that would be pretty normal. Yeah. So, but yeah, we're hoping to it. So I can shrink this down slightly. Is instead of having that select, I can change that to the exists. So I can do that too. And that should give me the same. Yep, there we go. And if I want to check to make sure, is the IG publisher going to be happy with it? Yep, good. So yeah, it's always nice to know that I can just make that quick flick and check, because if you're doing stuff for IG publishing, for that, you want to be sure that it's going to run in both environments. So really neat. Cool. And I'd say that that's about as neat as you get. Cool. So there we go. So with this one, so as it is, yep, like that. Well, do you want to, as a perfect test of this, do you want to click on the little Z in the corner to copy that expression that you've got, and then go over to the Zulip stream and then paste your test case. Excellent, we've got some more in here. Yep, easy sorted. Are others having a stab at it as well? It's good? Cool, copy paste error. Cool. All right. Well, I'm looking at the next one. So debug case, fix this invariant. Oh, try and give me something easy. Cool. All right, let's do that. You could, all right, so we'll copy that. And put that in. So this is on AU organisation. Is that in the IG? Yeah. Yeah. Do we have examples?
Yes.
Which one would you like? Hospital. Of course, the one I didn't click. That's all right. We can.
I can fetch you one.
That's all right.
It's exactly the same problem. The coding is already equal sign there.
Yeah, coding. So there's your collection problem. The IG publisher will tell you that one. Yeah, so you could move. Yeah, it is exactly the same problem, isn't it? So this is dot exists code equals that. And I can, yeah, you could even change the start point to say exists to shorten that down a bit. Now, implies is also a fun one. When I'm looking at what's going on here, there's a left-hand side which needs to evaluate to a Boolean, and the right-hand side also has to evaluate to a Boolean to get you a result. So I'm hoping so the intent here is to make, if you have one of these IDs,
Yes.
that that's there. So let's get an org. So let's go.
I've got an example, I can just paste that now, like a location of an example.
Yep.
I just popped that in the chat from base.
Cool. JSON.
There you go. That's got that type code in it.
All right. So we can just hide these things down to make it a bit easier to look at. And so all we're interested in to see, this has a HPIO, which is this one. And so if that exists, we want it to ensure that NOI exists, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go dot coding dot trace. So trace is my favorite debug tool. Code. And we also want to trace, I'm just going to trace out system just to see what it is in that context. Dot trace sys. And that's going to run on the context of identifier, isn't it?
Yes, it's on organisational identifier is where that invariant is set.
Yep. So yeah, actually that's a useful debug tip. So you were coming from, so this is the implementation guide. So this is the profile for the organisation that's in question. And we've got slices on the identifier. And we've created a invariant, which is on organisation.identifier. So to test that in the lab, we need to put the identifier as the context because that's where the expression or invariant is going to be executed from. And here we've got our example. So let's run that and see what we get out. So it says that one's fine. And so you wanted to see, so nope. So this one should fail now. That's the idea.
That's the idea.
Ooh.
It doesn't. Yeah, that's
Exciting. So what's in the trace?
Order of operations with the horse and maybe the horse would be in brackets.
It probably is, you know. Actually, so how would I know that? So the easiest way, so I think you're on the right path, but to check that, I can click the AST and that'll tell me exactly. So implies as exists and or. So theoretically, that shouldn't make any difference. So that will be interesting. So let's do it anyway, because that's what I would have done. And then run it to be sure. No. So why? So we've got, well, let's trace the left-hand side. Dot trace left. Yeah, I think I know what's happening here. So run that. What's in our trace? We have a false on the left. So therefore, so from the, actually, all right, back to our AST, we've got an implies. How have I not got a link to the spec in for that? There's a bug for Brian to fix. Implies. And how many of these have I got? So we go to the spec, look up what does implies state. So we've got a false on the left-hand side. And so we should get a true in either case. So that's not what you're after, is it?
no.
So our expression is saying that implies, it's almost as if you want that test the other way around, isn't it?
Actually, no, I think, okay, no, what we're saying actually is, I'm not actually sure we care if the code is no, and they've got the right system URLs. What I really care about is if they've got a identifier type they're declaring as a national identifier, but they've used some other system URL, some other system name.
Okay, so you're saying that, so if we get this and it says NOI,
Yeah, and
which,
then you change something in the system, that should fail.
Ryan,
Yeah.
yep. Cool.
Now that's a problem. Oh no, it's got false. So that's what I want to have happen.
Yep. And so if I undo and put that back and run it again, we're sweet. So the issue was, so I think if I take this braces out and run it again, so we are actually getting what we expect. So the issue, as we worked out, is really that whole exists. Cool. And for everyone's info, if you've published that in an IG, the IG will give you a message that says, warning.
You gotta add the system.
Yeah. You should definitely also have and system ... Yep. Cool. Well done, team. All right, so that was our first one. So is there a better way to convert a numeric value into a quantity? All right, this will be fun. I don't know is the answer. So is that the expression?
Yeah, that's the expression.
All right. And paste. We don't want it on that context, and you're given that resource. Cool. Not used to using the mouse like this, so the trackpad. And so that's cool. So what do we get when we run that? Function.toString is not supported on data type. What is data type?
Apparently it works, right? Yes, there's a result.
Yeah, so this is an exciting answer. Because yes, there's an error. So the engine itself doesn't report these errors. So I've got a static analyzer that checks the expression looking for common issues and what will be issues when you go and run them. So it's trying to make your life easier, but the engine can still run. So it might give you an unexpected result. So what are we expecting this to do? So to quantity, if I go to the spec,
I just have the integer number 5 in parameters to become quantity days. So add days to the current day.
okay. So you want to add 5 to now.
Yeah, 5 days, yeah.
That would be now plus select first value. I'm wondering whether you can even do D. No. Oh, no, it's not. It's not evaluating that as an expression. So
It has to be a constant.
yeah. Dot to quantity.
No, you can't.
Can't turn a 5 into a quantity.
It's,
To quantity is not. Okay. So yeah, so dot value, so that could be anything, and so dot of type integer. So that'll move it a little bit forward. So now I'll say of type test for integer, where possible types are data type. Yeah, so that looks like an issue with my engine, but we are getting a result. No. Day. Oh. Day. Run. Okay, so that one's a little more challenging. We'll continue that in the Zulip thread, and we'll move on. So we've got another 15 or so, haven't we? Yep. So what's next? Retrieve the medication code from a medication request.medication reference. All right. Cool. So we've got medication request dot medication reference. So that's the expression we want, and we want to get dot code. Is that the sort of thing? Who's the, yep, cool. I don't suppose you have an example medication request. So this is a neat trick. Underscore count equals 30. So it's just, so this is just a technique to try and get some test data. Because it's just running the query, I can then go and find something and say, here's one that has a medication reference. So that one's fine?
I don't know if that reference exists, but...
Yeah. So the interesting part, so I will tackle this one a little bit. So this medication reference, so if I go to medication, what was it? Medication request, is that what it was? Yep. So if I go down to the property, so is that the one? Hang on. R4 is what I'm working with. So it probably looks a bit different. Where is it? Medication, he's looking. Yeah, so it could be a codable reference or a codable concept or a reference down here. So we can, so the first part is that's wrong. So because that's the concrete syntax, not the logical model syntax. So I'm going to actually do this entry dot resource dot of type medication. So that'll actually run that expression across each of the medication requests in there. I'm getting nothing, so that's kind of fun. So let's trace. Yep. So I'll just run that to make sure that, yes, I'm actually getting those resources. And of course, that's how you close the window. Cool. So we actually have that. Now medication dot trace med. So I really don't need to trace that anymore. Let's run that and see what we're getting. Cool. So that shows that all the examples that we're looking at have that. So now the fun next step is you want to go resolve to follow that link to then walk into that resource. So unfortunately for this, because this engine or this test harness is only running on this specific instance, it's not running on a server. So it's only been given, this is all it's been given. So when it tries to do a resolve and run, it goes. Yes, but once again, it's the implementation of resolve doesn't see that extra detail. We can try it.
If it was a contained resource, would it work?
Yeah.
Medication requests on medication lowercase.
Just colon
Medication lowercase. The bundle will now have both of them.
medication. Sorry, what?
Resolve the lowercase r instead of capital.
Oh, yep. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So there we go. So we're getting .resolve.code, and that's coming from. Does that look like it's doing what we thought?
That looks like it did, yeah.
Cool. So issues with that are the resolve has to be able to do that traversal. So each of the engines and have a way to specify in that execution environment how to do the resolve. So it could be the environment you're in or the engine, how it's hosted is not running that properly. Cool.
But I have a question.
Yep.
Don't you need to do an off-type reference? Because if the resource will have the medication as a codable concept, will the resolve fail?
Actually, that is a great question. And I'm going to futz this a bit so that we have one that's not. So if this was a medication, what was it in the other one? Codable concept, which is an object, and it has a text of yay, and then run it. So what will happen? So you'll get, so the execution runs, no problem. And so if I look at the trace, I can see that that resolve, or prior to that resolve, there's my yay, so I know that it actually went into it, but the resolve did nothing, and so I didn't get another code value to come out from that one. So that's a good test case. And I don't need to actually do the cast. If it's going to be safe to ignore the cast, it can just have that type and it'll work out, well, there is no .code property on, resolve doesn't do anything on the codable concept. So because there's no way to run that, that's perfectly fine. And it just says, no, I have no input collection that's relevant. I'll have nothing on the output collection.
Would that be the same in different engines?
Yes. Yep. And all the engines will do the same thing for that. So that is a good one, thank you. But yeah, obviously you can do of type to explicitly do it. Yep. Cool. So I'm going to copy that and I'll put that back in as the answer. And luckily for me, that's too big. So when I look in there, you'll note sometimes there's a 1K or 2K limit on that, so 16, that's a bit large, and that is purely because that thing that we downloaded here and changed. But if I re-download it, and then, so that'll actually be fine. So if you don't change the expression or don't change the sample, you can then share it quite happily. So let's kill that off. Put it in. There we go. So there's one that works. Cool. That was kind of neat. Is this another one?
Sorry, Brian, just on that last one, do you need resolve if it's a contained resource?
So resolve can work whether it's a contained resource or an external. So resolve will...
Do you need it if it's contained with the resolve thing?
So yes, you would. Because, so if this is instead of saying patient and going to hashtag pat1 and it's up there, so when I'm going dot whatever, I've only got, that's the terminal point in that expression node. And so, so I do want to do resolve, so I end up at the patient. Yep. Cool. So, yep. Is that the same one or is that a different one?
That one, that's different. I don't even know if that's a problem. It's just I think we've got a QA warning and I'm not sure whether it's a technology issue
Cool.
or it's a FHIRPath issue. But I thought if we were looking for cases,
Cool. All right.
can you spot a problem with it?
So shall we do that, or would someone like to... Yeah, let's do that, given we've only got the 5 minutes left. That's of type patient we're working with?
Yeah.
Sweet. So do it, and we'll go to our old friend patient / example.
Yeah, you'll have to get probably an example from, let me provide a link to it. I've actually copied a link in the thing. If we say, there, I've got a link to
That one?
the example, yep.
Ooh, juicy. So paste that in, and Let's run that and see what message we get out.
Member of.
Can it cast from a collection of codable concepts to any type? That's fun. So let's have a look. And of course, we didn't get to the tree by that point, so let's run it against the other. Not implemented member of. So I do have an implementation of member of, or and this is kind of neat. If you're getting a big expression, you can just use the little navigator and it'll sweep things out so you get nice and wide. Glad I put that in eventually. So extension type value dot member of. And when we run it, we get all failed invocation. Okay, so this will be a collection problem. So member of is a function that only works on one, and it's unable to resolve what this is, so it thinks it's getting a collection. So I'd suggest that's .all, something like that. Let's see if that even runs. Yeah, so it's going to be that issue around member of being not able to run on a collection, so you'll need to work out what is the appropriate thing that you need to do there to check that.
Okay. Pretty sure that extension only has like a massive one thing. It's always codable concept, but I guess it's...
Yeah. So that's the issue. So the IG publisher is not going to know and resolve to work out what is the cardinality of that extension. It knows extensions can be a set.
Yeah.
So it's actually at this point where the collection is. And so dot value, even though that's singular in the extension, because it's on a collection of extensions, becomes a collection.
If it's a codable concept, then all of the codes should be members of. One of them should be.
Yeah, well, it's whatever her business logic wants. Yeah, cool. Well, I think thanks everyone for coming along. That's awesome. I hope this has been a useful session. Cool.